I could tell something was wrong the moment they stopped inviting me to the Tuesday syncs. The ones I created, scheduled, and ran for nearly 5 years straight. No warning, no explanation. My calendar just started emptying itself like a leaking faucet. First went the huddles, then the compliance reviews, then the quarterly audit debriefs I built from scratch. A week later, I saw our new strategy VP, a guy named Ethan Carrington, presenting my SOC 2 slide deck to the board. Same formatting, same diagrams, even the same typos. He didn't even bother to change the color scheme. Just swapped my name on the title page for Prepared by Executive Operations, and the board applauded like he'd cured cancer. That same afternoon, I got an email from HR. Subject line: Realignment of Functions, Shared Governance Initiative. A wall of corporate gibberish about synergy, integration, and workflow optimization. But between the lines, it said one thing loud and clear. Everything I'd built was being absorbed and reassigned. Shared services meant stripped and scattered. My analysts were now reporting to product managers who couldn't spell compliance if you spotted them 3 letters. The audit trail for those transfers was a disaster, but I traced it. All the changes executed without a single call or message. Even the junior associate I'd mentored through her CPA exam stopped sending updates. Guess the memo was clear. Pretend Lauren Pierce didn't exist. Beige, silent, replaceable. But I'd been in compliance too long to panic. People like me don't shout when the ship starts to sink. We just follow the leaks. And that's exactly what I did. I opened my laptop and logged into the audit control system, my old domain. Still had admin rights. No MFA prompt, no lockout. No one had touched it since I finalized our SOC2 renewal 6 months earlier. The dashboard looked untouched, frozen in time. There it was in clean digital ink. Primary Custodian, Lauren Pierce. SOC2 Certification, 2024-6 Renewal Cycle. They forgot. They'd reassigned everyone, gutted every department, but somehow missed the most important anchor in the entire compliance framework. The named certifier. And that certifier was still me. I stared at that line for a long minute, heartbeat calm, coffee cooling beside me. They'd erased my name from the slides, but not from the certification that kept their investors breathing easy. That's the thing about quiet operators. We build the skeleton that the flashy people hang their vanity on. And when the skeleton decides to walk away, the body collapses. The CEO, Chase Benton, age 38, Stanford MBA, face made for LinkedIn. He was the one who started the new era. The board called him a visionary. What they meant was talks fast, fires faster. Chase loved compliance light initiatives. Code for "we'll handle lawsuits later." He'd cut our QA department in half, then bragged about it on an investor call. And me? He called me the quiet type, like I was some forgotten printer collecting dust. When he said that in front of the team, I knew I was being phased out. Slowly, painlessly. The way you delete a file, one click, no ceremony. But the funny thing about compliance people is, we plan for negligence, we count on it. So I backed up everything. Every audit record, every control log, every signature file, neatly labeled, encrypted, air-gapped on a 1 terabyte silver drive sitting in a locked drawer under my desk at home. And inside that folder, a certain addendum. See, page 19. My signature beneath a clause that read, "Certifier role is non-transferable without written consent from the original certifier or formal board override, requiring a 14-day reevaluation of all control matrices." I didn't add it to be clever. I added it because Chase never read what he signed, and I'd learned that if people stop inviting you to meetings, you better make sure your name stays somewhere they can't delete it. They thought I was done, but they'd just handed me the quietest, sharpest weapon possible: legal custodianship. I closed the laptop, poured myself a cup of lukewarm break room coffee, and smiled. Let them think I'd faded out. They'd learn soon enough. It happened on a Thursday, because in corporate America, bad news always lands right before the weekend when no one has the energy to fight back. I was in the middle of reviewing a draft policy that an intern had butchered beyond recognition when a Slack message popped up from HR. No subject line, no greeting, just, "Can you stop by the 10th floor for a quick check-in?" A quick check-in is corporate for "we're about to fire you, but we'd like to smile while we do it." I didn't pack anything. No laptop, no notebook, no dramatics. Just walked in like I was attending a weather forecast. Predictable, cloudy with a chance of betrayal. The conference room was already staged for the ritual. Dana from HR, eyes glassy but rehearsed. Paul, one of the in-house legal counsels, fidgeting with his pen. And finally Chase Benton, the self-proclaimed visionary, 5 minutes late, sipping a green juice like he'd invented chlorophyll. He gave me that sleek politician's smile and said, "Lauren, first off, I just want to thank you. You've built an incredible foundation for where we are today." He slid a manila envelope across the table like it was a birthday card instead of a guillotine. "We're finalizing the acquisition Monday. $100 million valuation, 0 debt. You've been a key part of this, but as we integrate operations, we're streamlining leadership roles under strategic operations. It's all about alignment." I opened the envelope. 2 pieces of paper. Termination agreement. Final paycheck. $2,000 for unused vacation days. No severance. No letter of appreciation. No handshake from the board. Just a signature line at the bottom and an effective date. Immediately. He kept talking, something about nothing personal and new direction, but all I heard was the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. When he stood up, I stood too. "Congratulations," I said, steady and quiet. His smirk faltered for half a second. Then I turned and walked out. No drama, no slammed doors, just silence, the kind that stretches and echoes. The elevator ride down felt surreal. I passed the security guards who didn't even glance up, and the wall where my Employee of the Year plaque still hung, dated 2020, back when compliance still mattered. I walked through the glass doors and into the parking lot sunlight, calm, detached, almost amused. They'd made one fatal mistake. They assumed offboarding meant powerless. When I got home, I brewed a cup of tea, then opened the black filing cabinet under my desk. The one Chase never knew existed. Inside was that silver drive, 1 terabyte, password protected, air-gapped, holding 4 years of my work. Every SOC 2 control matrix, every signed audit record, every renewal file, neatly cataloged. And right there, the Holy Grail. Addendum C, page 19, signed by me and countersigned by legal, the CTO, and the external auditor. Clause 14.3, non-transferable certifier. Any reassignment required my written consent and a 14-day reevaluation. That clause wasn't decoration. It was a tripwire. Chase had never noticed it, never read past the executive summary. He thought signatures were ceremonial. I thought signatures were weapons. I printed 3 copies of the addendum, sealed one in my safe, another in a locked folder labeled insurance, and emailed the third to an encrypted backup account only I could access. No rage post, no calls, no legal threats. I just let the silence breathe. Because silence, in the right hands, is louder than any lawsuit. The next morning, I woke early, poured black coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in, and opened my old compliance binder. 5 pounds of laminated pages and red tabs that smelled faintly of highlighter and revenge. I reread every clause until my eyes blurred, memorizing each line of the certifier section. No expiration, no override, no loopholes. I smiled. The company thought it owned the certification, but I owned the custody. Without me, that $100 million deal wasn't compliant. It was a ticking time bomb. I didn't need to lift a finger. All I had to do was wait. By the following week, the quiet started to hum with tension. I didn't reach out to anyone, but I didn't have to. In compliance, panic leaves digital footprints. The first breadcrumb arrived Monday morning, a series of Slack notifications I technically shouldn't have been receiving anymore. Somehow, my access hadn't been revoked from the company's internal audit portal or its notification feed. I watched in real time as messages stacked up like dominoes, tipping into chaos. At Lauren, quick question about SOC2 transfer doc. Then another. Need confirmation of certifier ownership for buyer packet. Urgent. And then a dozen more. I didn't respond. I stirred my oatmeal, scrolled lazily through the alerts, and let the storm build. Because once a buyer's audit team enters the picture, the smallest inconsistency becomes a grenade. By noon, the legal department tried revoking my credentials. 3 failed attempts logged in sequence. They couldn't eject me from the system because the custodian clause in my contract made it illegal to reassign active certifications without my written clearance or a 14-day review cycle. I wasn't a ghost in the machine. I was the lock on their only exit. And the buyers? They were already asking questions. The external audit window opened that afternoon. I recognized one of the names on the inquiry list. Monica Raymond, lead auditor at Riven Analytics, a CPA with the kind of reputation that makes CEOs sweat. She'd once sat on a panel with me at a compliance summit in Chicago. Sharp mind, zero tolerance for sloppiness. When Monica's name appeared in the portal log, I knew the clock had started. Her team sent the first official request to the company. Please confirm current name certifier for SOC 2 2024-2026 renewal cycle. That message landed in Doug Ellis, the CTO's inbox. Doug, who once bragged he didn't really do paperwork, replied after 30 minutes of frantic confusion. I believe it was Lauren Pierce who recently transitioned out. We'll confirm reassignment shortly. Transitioned out. Cute. Monica's follow-up was immediate. Was reassignment formally documented? Please provide certifier transfer file and control matrix updates. That one landed like a thunderclap. Legal scrambled, searching the compliance archive I once maintained, and found exactly what I knew they'd find. Nothing. No transfer memo, no clearance log, no updated matrix. Because Chase had never followed through. He'd fired the certifier of record without realizing the certification was non-transferable. Within hours, the buyer's lawyers flagged the missing documentation as a potential material compliance gap. 7 words that can drain a room of optimism faster than a lawsuit. Material, compliance, gap. That phrase isn't just a red flag, it's a torpedo. Investors see it, and the valuation drops like a stone. By early evening, someone from the internal IT department tried fabricating a replacement PDF. I saw it appear briefly in the audit portal. Draft certifier transfer agreement. No signatures, placeholders everywhere, clearly written in panic. Monica rejected it within 40 minutes. Document incomplete, unsigned. Please clarify certifier's departure timeline and current custodianship status. In audit language, that meant, we're not buying this. Then came the phone calls. Brian Monroe, the company's legal counsel, tried my number first. I let it ring. Then he texted, Lauren, need to confirm certifier clearance, important clarification. Clarification, not requirement, not demand. The vocabulary had shifted from authority to desperation. I pictured Chase pacing in some overpriced boardroom, trying to figure out how a quiet compliance girl had become the choke point in his $100 million acquisition. They had built their empire on a paper foundation, and I was the signature holding it upright. By sunset, their Slack channels looked like triage. Words like urgent, escalate, and freeze risk peppered the feeds. The next morning, I walked 2 blocks to my favorite cafe, ordered a black coffee, and scrolled through the chaos again on my phone. Still had access. Still listed as primary custodian. still untouchable. And somewhere in those glass offices downtown, Chase Benton was learning the difference between owning a company and owning compliance. Tuesday came wrapped in corporate dread. The buyer's due diligence team was now deep inside the system, asking the kind of questions that turn confidence into nausea. Due diligence isn't paperwork, it's an autopsy. They don't just check what you built, they check what you buried. At 10:03 a.m., a new message hit the portal from Riven Analytics. Can we please confirm the status of the named certifier for the SOC 2 compliance cycle? It was signed again by Monica Raymond. I could almost hear her voice, calm, clinical, giving no room to dodge. The message was routed to Chase's inbox and copied to Doug and Brian. Chase, who still believed charisma could fix anything, fired back a reply that read like it had been written in a hurry. Our former compliance officer, Lauren Pierce, was involved in prior cycles. Transition to new oversight is in progress. Translation: we're screwed, but we hope you won't notice yet. Monica responded within minutes. Please provide documentation verifying that reassignment. Specifically, a signed certifier transfer form and the corresponding control matrix update. That was the moment the buyers stopped smiling. I saw it in the audit log timestamps, emails multiplying, files being accessed, internal chatter doubling every few minutes. Someone from legal uploaded a half-complete draft labeled SOC2 Transfer Final V1 PDF. It wasn't final. It wasn't even valid. Monica rejected it in less than half an hour. Document invalid, missing required signatures. She attached a note for clarity. Under Clause 14.3, certification is non-transferable without written authorization from the original certifier. Those 14 words detonated across the company like an earthquake. The finance team pinged legal. Legal pinged the board pinged Chase. By noon, someone used the phrase material disclosure risk in an internal memo. That's the corporate equivalent of yelling fire in a crowded theater. The valuation they'd been bragging about, $100 million, clean exit, zero debt, was now tangled in legal uncertainty. Without a valid certifier, the SOC2 wasn't transferable. Without a transferable SOC2, the buyer couldn't close the deal. At 2:19 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Brian Monroe calling. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail that started with a sigh and ended with a plea. Lauren, please call me. We just need clarification about your custodial role. It's urgent. Clarification again. Not command. Not threat. Need. The tone was shifting faster than their stock price. That evening, I logged into the Slack workspace through the browser. Technically, I was gone. Realistically, I was still everywhere. The general compliance channel was a battlefield of panic. Someone asked, "Who's the backup certifier?" Silence. Then another message. Audit access locked. Permissions denied. I smiled. I had set those permissions myself during the last renewal cycle. Read only for everyone except the named certifier. Me. Compliance rule number 1. Never give edit access to people who treat policies like suggestions. Later that night, while the city lights blinked outside my window, I poured a glass of scotch and scrolled through the threads. Every message was the sound of desperation typed into Slack. We're trying to reach her. Can we override the clause? Buyer demanding proof of authority. Escalate to board. My favorite one came from Doug, the CTO. Can we just fake a memo? The reply from legal was immediate. Not unless you enjoy perjury. That's when I leaned back, took a slow sip, and exhaled. This wasn't rage anymore. It was something colder, steadier. Leverage. I didn't have to lift a finger to destroy anything. They were collapsing under the weight of their own arrogance. And the best part? Every second they scrambled was recorded in the audit trail, time-stamped, permanent, impossible to spin. Tomorrow, the buyer's audit lead was scheduled to meet Chase and his team on Zoom for a final confirmation call. I already knew how it would end. I didn't need to be there to hear the silence when my name came up. The clause was my ghost, and ghosts don't need introductions. Friday morning arrived like Judgment Day. The conference room downtown had been prepped for celebration. Catering trays of croissants, glasses half filled with champagne, the faint hum of preemptive victory. Chase wore his navy lucky blazer, the one he reserved for photos that would end up on LinkedIn. He told the press 2 weeks earlier that the acquisition was locked and loaded. But in mergers, timing is everything, and arrogance has a way of showing up early. At 10 a.m., sharp, the Zoom call began. On one side, Chase, Brian, Doug, and 2 nervous associates from finance. On the other, the buyer's delegation, polished, patient, and flanked by their auditors from Riven Analytics. The pleasantries started smoothly. The buyer's CFO congratulated everyone on an exemplary process. The partner from Roth and Devine LLP, their external counsel, smiled like a man already tasting his weekend martini, and then Monica Raymond unmuted. "Before we finalize," she said in her measured voice, "we just need one final piece of documentation, confirmation from the named certifier on the SOC2 compliance file." The air went still. You could hear the mechanical buzz of someone's laptop fan. Chase blinked twice, buying time. "I'm sure legal has that on hand," he said, forcing a grin. Brian shuffled through papers, coughing into the mic. The buyer's attorney asked, "Who is the named certifier listed?" Monica didn't even check her notes. "Lauren Pierce." The silence that followed could have cracked glass. Chase froze mid-sip. Doug looked like he wanted to crawl through his webcam. Yes," Chase stammered. "Lauren is no longer with the company, but the certification remains active." Monica's expression didn't change. "Has the certifier reassignment been formally documented in accordance with Clause 14.3? Off-screen, Brian whispered something panicked. Monica waited. The buyer's lead counsel, a man with silver hair and the tone of someone who'd stopped tolerating nonsense decades ago, leaned in. "Let's pause here," he said. "We're freezing the transaction until the certifier issue is resolved." He didn't say delay. He said freezing. That word hit like a gavel. The $100 million deal, the clean exit Chase had promised the board, was now locked behind my untouched signature. The buyer's legal team requested full chain of custody documentation, SOC2 reassignment logs, and confirmation of custodial clearance. In other words, show us proof Lauren signed off, or we walk. The call ended abruptly. Cameras blinked out, leaving Chase's reflection staring back at him in a black screen. Somewhere across town, I sat at my kitchen table sipping tea, watching the emails start to pile up through the mirrored access portal they'd never revoked. Notifications read like panic attacks. Urgent. Certifier contact info. Need clarification? Buyer paused, closing. Possible compliance breach. Immediate review. At 7:40 a.m., my phone buzzed again. A voicemail. Brian's voice, brittle, careful. "Hi, Lauren. It's Brian Monroe." Listen. I know this isn't ideal, but we could really use your input, just to clarify documentation for the auditors. Of course, we're happy to discuss terms." I didn't bother replying. I hit delete. 20 minutes later, my inbox pinged. Subject line, consulting opportunity. The sender, Chase Benton. The message was 4 lines long, almost apologetic. "Lauren, I recognize your critical role in earlier compliance cycles. We'd be happy to engage you as a consultant to finalize the remaining documents. Generous rate, of course. Let's wrap this and get everyone paid." No apology, no acknowledgement of how he'd humiliated me in that HR room. just desperation wrapped in HR perfume. So, I replied, one sentence long. You valued me at $2,000. That's my rate per hour. I attached a formal invoice for 24 billable hours labeled SOC2 Certifier Reinstatement, PDF. Under terms, I added, full payment required before signature. Any deviation voids agreement. It wasn't negotiation. It was a ransom note written in polite font. And by mid-afternoon, I knew they'd pay, because Chase didn't have a company anymore. He had a crisis with my name printed at the bottom of it. By Tuesday morning, the temperature inside that company's glass tower had dropped to absolute zero. The buyers had filed a formal memo through Riven Analytics, now logged in both parties' shared vault. In light of the named certifier discrepancy and non-transferability clause, a full internal controls reassessment is required prior to closing. Estimated delay, 3 weeks. 3 weeks meant lost momentum, nervous investors, and millions shaved off valuation. The memo might as well have been titled Lauren Pierce Owns You. I could see the ripples unfold in real time. Slack threads full of brittle professionalism, emails marked high importance, calendar invites with titles like Emergency Compliance Meeting. They were drowning in process because they no longer controlled the narrative. Chase's assistant tried another angle, messaging me through LinkedIn with a painfully cheerful tone. Hi, Lauren. Hope you're well. The team would love to reconnect to resolve a small paperwork hiccup. A hiccup. That word made me laugh out loud. You don't call a missing certifier signature a hiccup. You call it a torpedo. I waited exactly 48 hours before replying. Timing is half of leverage. I sent an email to Brian instead, short, formal, and cold enough to frost glass. Please confirm written acceptance of my consulting invoice and terms. Access to audit systems will not resume until payment is processed in full. Within an hour, the payment hit my account. $48,000, wire transfer, memo line, consulting services. I stared at the confirmation for a moment, then closed my laptop. They could call it whatever they wanted. I called it poetic balance. The next morning, I got dressed like it was any other workday. Charcoal blazer, hair tied back, no makeup except for confidence. I drove to the same office that had escorted me out weeks earlier. The receptionist froze when I walked in. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice trembling slightly. "You can buzz me up," I said. She pressed the button without a word. The elevator opened on the 12th floor, where the audit war room had been converted into a triage center for corporate redemption. Buyer reps sat on one side, legal and finance on the other, a forest of laptops glowing under fluorescent light. At the head of the table was Monica Raymond, as sharp and unflappable as ever. She stood when I entered. "Ms. Pierce," she said with a faint smile. "Thank you for coming." Her handshake was firm, her eyes steady. Behind her, the buyer's CFO gave a polite nod. No small talk, no false warmth. Just respect, the kind reserved for people who keep skyscrapers from collapsing. I placed my black leather folder on the table and slid out a single page, printed and notarized. "Final clearance confirmation," it read. "SOC2 Renewal 2024-26 Certifier, Lauren E. Pierce. Conditions met. All controls verified. Certification holds." I handed it to Monica, who inspected it, then turned to her team. "We're good," she said simply. The tension that had strangled the room all week evaporated. Someone whispered, "Thank God." The CFO exhaled audibly, scribbling a note to release the funds. Even the buyer's attorney looked relieved. From the hallway, through the frosted glass panel, I saw him, Chase Benton, standing outside in his tailored navy suit, one shade darker than the bruise forming on his pride. He wasn't invited inside. No one gestured for him to join. He just stood there, hands in pockets, watching through the glass as I restored the deal he'd almost destroyed. For a second, our eyes met. His expression was something between defeat and disbelief. I gave him nothing in return. Not a smile, not a glare. Just stillness. Because real revenge doesn't need a victory pose. As I gathered my folder, Monica thanked me again. "Clean work," she said. I nodded. It always was. I didn't stay for the small talk. The signatures were done, the certification reinstated, and the buyer's team began to pack their laptops like a storm had finally passed. I slipped my folder back under my arm and walked toward the door, heels clicking in that deliberate rhythm that always unnerved people who used to underestimate me. As I passed Brian Monroe, I handed him a sealed envelope. "Everything you need is in there," I said quietly. He nodded, unsure if he should thank me or apologize. I didn't wait for either. I just walked away. When the elevator doors closed, I finally exhaled. The ride down was silent except for the faint hum of the cables. My reflection in the mirrored wall looked calm, almost indifferent, but behind that calm sat the knowledge that the deal had survived because of me. Not Chase, not his so-called strategic evolution, not the board. Me, the woman they fired without severance. By the time I stepped outside, the afternoon sun hit the glass tower like a spotlight. I crossed the street to the cafe across from the building, ordered an iced coffee, and sat by the window facing the entrance. Through the glass, I could see Chase pacing the lobby, phone pressed to his ear, expression tight. His perfect, media-ready smile was gone. He looked smaller, quieter, like someone finally realizing that charisma can't override compliance. I watched him for a moment, then opened my laptop. My inbox already had a confirmation from accounting. Wire received. $48,000, paid in full. I clicked open the attached note. "Thank you for your assistance, Ms. Pierce. We appreciate your professionalism during this process." Polite. Cold. Exactly how I liked it. I filed the email under closed cases and smiled. Before I left, I sent one final message, an invoice receipt acknowledgement to legal with the memo line. "Same value you gave me. No threats, no flourish, no insult. Just balance." Because revenge doesn't always need fireworks. Sometimes it just needs precision. That night, back in my apartment, I opened the black cabinet one last time. The silver hard drive still rested inside, its surface catching a glint of streetlight through the blinds. I ran a finger along the label, SOC 2, 2026, final, then locked it away again. Not because I needed it, but because I liked knowing it was there. Proof that quiet doesn't mean weak, that silence doesn't mean powerless. I poured a glass of red wine and stood by the window, watching downtown Cleveland pulse with late-night traffic. Somewhere inside that skyline, Chase was probably rewriting his next investor memo, explaining the unexpected compliance delay in language that softened the truth. The truth that a single forgotten clause and a single dismissed employee had stopped a $100 million deal cold. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You handled that beautifully. If you ever want to discuss consulting for Riven Analytics, we'd be interested. Signed, Monica Raymond." I smiled. Maybe I would take that call. Maybe not. Either way, I had options again, and freedom is the best currency there is. I closed the blinds, set my laptop to sleep, and leaned against the kitchen counter. The city hummed outside, indifferent but alive. My revenge hadn't been loud, but it had been thorough. They got their deal. I got my dignity, and $48,000 to remind them of what they'd thrown away. Before bed, I scrawled a note on a yellow sticky pad and pressed it to the edge of my monitor. Don't let them silence the quiet ones. It wasn't a warning. It was a memory, a reminder that the quiet ones keep the lights on, the systems running, the signatures valid. And sometimes, when arrogance forgets their names, the quiet ones remind the world who really certifies the empire. I shut off the lights, left the apartment glowing only with the soft blue of the city skyline, and whispered to no one in particular. Conditions met. Certification holds.